You will note that Bill is a young man. His 9/11 injuries forced an early retirement. Bill was born in Queens, New York, followed his father's footsteps, joining FDNY in 1998, and rising to lieutenant, assigned to the 4th Battalion. Bill's father retired as a lieutenant with 34 years of service with FDNY. His brother Brian Hennessy is a captain with NYPD. Now, Bill has received multiple awards, including the 9/11 Rescuer Medal, a commendation from the New York City District Attorney's offices, and a Unit Citation Medal. Bill is now a local teacher and pursuing his master's degree in elementary education. Please join me in welcoming him.
Good evening. My name is Billy Hennessy. I recently moved to Scottsdale, Arizona with my beautiful wife, Lisa, and I recently retired as a lieutenant from the New York City Fire Department, the greatest job in the history of the world. I always wanted to be a firefighter, ever since I was a child. I grew up in a family rich with civil service. As you guys just heard, my father had over 30 years as a firefighter. My Uncle Eddie was a firefighter. My Uncle Bill, unfortunately, was a police officer. He worked in the busiest police precinct in the South Bronx. It's famously nicknamed Fort Apache. And currently, my younger brother, Brian, is the youngest captain in the New York Police Department history. As a child, I always wanted to be a firefighter. I grew up going to picnics, Christmas parties, company events, sporting events. I was always around the guys. I knew one day I would want to get on that job. But the day I remember, it hit me like a lightning bolt. There was one day specifically. I was in college. I went to Lemoyne College in Syracuse, New York, 5 hours away from the city. And I told all my friends, all the new guys I met up at school, how great it was to grow up in New York City. I told them how wonderful my family and my friends were, and one weekend, a long weekend, I convinced them to come down to New York City to spend some time. So we went to my parents' house, and my father invited everyone. He was working the following night tour. My father invited everybody to the firehouse. We were going to have dinner with them, and the catch line was, there was a heavyweight title fight. Riddick Bowe and Evander Holyfield were fighting, so my friends jumped at the opportunity. The next night, we went over to the firehouse. My dad waited for us at the front door. We walked through the doors, and he showed us the engine and the tower ladder. We walked back towards the kitchen to meet the guys, and my dad stopped us halfway, right in front of the gear racks. We all looked up at the helmets, and my dad grabbed a helmet for each of us, put a helmet on top of our head, and grabbed a turnout coat. That's what they were called back then. And he said, I okayed it with the captain. You guys were all allowed to ride on the trucks tonight when the alarms go off. My friends and I were ecstatic. It was unbelievable. We walked back into the kitchen, and the atmosphere in the kitchen was electric. The music was on, guys were singing. One guy was playing the drums with 2 wooden spoons on the hanging pots. Guys were sitting at the table chopping onions, dicing garlic, peeling potatoes. We had a wonderful steak dinner and an even better camaraderie with the men. After we ate, we went upstairs to the 3rd floor. There's a television room up there. And we were about to watch the fight. Before the fight started, we looked around the room. My friends were enamored by the paraphernalia for the fire department. Spectacular photographs of fires that they were at, picnics, softball pictures, ski race pictures, and all these old melted helmets in the back. In the 3rd round of the fight, the bells went off, and everybody slid the poles, and we followed their lead. We slid down to the apparatus floor, we put on our helmets, we put on our bunker coats, or turnout coats, and within 1 minute, we were out the door, lights and sirens blaring, heading down Myrtle Avenue towards Brooklyn. For some of my friends, it was their first time in New York City, and they're on the back of a fire truck, flying through the city. The closer we got to the emergency, the more the smell of smoke became more prevalent. A bunch of people were standing on the corner, and they were pointing us to turn left. We turned left, and there were 2 cars fully involved in fire. The guys from the engine jumped off and stretched the line. My dad ran over to the truck and grabbed the partner saw, and the guys started knocking down the fire with the hose line. My dad's standing right in the middle of these 2 flaming cars, and he's cutting open the front hood. The hoods were melted, and to get access to the battery. When the fire was knocked down, the people in the street, all the residents from that neighborhood, they all started clapping. I looked over at my father and he looked at me and he gave me a thumbs up. That was the exact moment I knew I wanted to be a firefighter. It hit me like a lightning bolt. A couple of weeks after that, I'm back up at college and one of the guys who was down there that weekend knocked on the door. I was studying for an exam. And he said, "Did you see the news?" And I said, "What news?" And he said, "Turn on the television." It was February 26, 1993. That's the day the World Trade Center was first bombed for the first terrorist attack. My father's truck, that truck that we were all riding on a few weeks earlier, was right in front of the chaos. My heart stopped. Luckily, there were no fatalities to the fire department that day. As you are all aware, September 11, 2001 had a different result. That morning, luckily, I was off duty. I was sleeping. I was in my parents' basement. I had a studio apartment in my parents' basement. And I woke up to the sound of my dad screaming at me, "Billy, turn on the television. There's a huge fire. A plane just crashed into the World Trade Center." Fumbled for the remote control, turned on the television. And at first glance, there had to be at least 15 floors of fire. You guys can call me naive, but my first thought that it was an accident. I just didn't believe that anyone would do that on purpose. My father came downstairs and we watched this tragedy unfold right in front of our eyes. A second later, the phone rang with my best friend James. He worked in that tower that was on fire. He worked on the 39th floor for a financial company. And I asked him, "Is he okay? He should get out of there." And here's one of the good 9/11 stories. His daughter, his first child, my goddaughter, was born on September 8th. This guy worked 10 hours a day, 6 days a week. He hasn't taken a day off in 10 years. That's the day he was taking his daughter home from the hospital. He was not in that tower. So I was lucky that my best friend, I was happy that he was out of harm's way. Just then, as in the middle of talking with him, the second plane hits the next tower. On the bottom of the TV screen, the emergency message comes along the bottom. "All police and firefighters report for duty." I told him I had to go, and I started putting on my pants and my sneakers. My mom overheard me from upstairs and screamed out, "You're not going anywhere." She came running down the stairs. She starts arguing with my dad. "He can't leave. Tell him he's not going." And I just put on my stuff. I looked at my dad. As a father, he did not want me to leave. But as a he retired by then. As a retired firefighter, he knew I had to go. So I ran upstairs, ran out to the front of my house and jumped in my car. As I was running out to my car, my mom ran out the front door and said that she loved me. She screamed out, "I love you." I looked back at her. My dad was standing right next to her. He said the 2 words he's been saying to me since I'm a little kid: "Be careful." I jumped in my car. I headed down Elliott Avenue towards the Long Island Expressway. I only lived 6 miles away from Lower Manhattan. The police department had the highways blocked off. I had to show them my fire department badge to get on the highway, and I was the only car on the highway heading into the city. Every underpass I passed on the way into the city had 100 people, because you can see the entire skyline. The closer I got to Manhattan, I could see the billowing jet black clouds of smoke polluting like the bluest sky I'd ever seen in my life. I got towards the Midtown Tunnel, and as I entered the tunnel, I started to panic a little bit. I said, "You know what? Tunnels have always been high on the terror list." I thought that could be a next target. I could not get out of that tunnel fast enough. I finally got out of the tunnel and started heading towards my firehouse. And I noticed I was at a red light right outside of the United Nations. And I thought that's going to be another target. I finally pulled down the street of my firehouse, and simultaneously a whole bunch of firefighters, we all drove our cars up onto the sidewalks. The bay doors of the firehouse were open, and our trucks had already gone down there. We rallied, we grabbed everything we thought we might need down there. Medical supplies, water, gasoline in case we needed to run generators, ropes, Stokes baskets, anything we could use. The block that my firehouse is on, East 67th Street in Manhattan, happens to be a traverse that goes to the west side, and the New York City buses run through it. We stopped one of the New York City buses, we commandeered the bus, we asked all the people to get off, and we asked the bus driver if he would take us down to Ground Zero. He helped us load all of our gear onto the truck, and we were heading across to the west side to make our way down the West Side Highway. We stopped at a firehouse, Engine 40 and Ladder 35, on the way down. We picked up more guys, and right before we left that firehouse, our captain grabbed the journal. It's a daily journal, and it's what you sign every time you walk into a firehouse. So he wanted to make sure all of us were going to be accounted for. So we all signed the journal. And right before we left that firehouse, on the television, the second tower had collapsed. There's a church right next door to that firehouse, and the priest came running out of the church, and he hopped on the bus with us. We started heading down the West Side Highway, and there were no twin towers at the end of Lower Manhattan. There was just a huge cloud of smoke. I don't even think the bus driver had known what happened at that point. We started moving downtown, and the priest led us in a group prayer. I always wondered what it was like for soldiers to go to war, and I was just about to find out. I started wondering, maybe my mother was right. Maybe I shouldn't have left so soon. What am I doing here? I was so nervous. Some guys on the back of the bus started to get sick, and then after the group prayer, it was completely silent. The closer we got down there, I could feel the bus driver taking his foot off the accelerator to the bus. He was not in a hurry to go down there, and rushing down beside us were fire trucks on both sides. The priest actually gave us what I thought was an abbreviated last rites. And then before we got off, he said, pass around this book that you guys all just signed on. If anybody wants to write a letter to their family, I'll make sure that you get it. So I started looking around, and some of the guys I had worked with, some really seasoned veteran firefighters, real men, guys with mustaches and tattoos, they started ripping pages out of the book. And I was sitting next to one of the guys, I looked over his shoulder, and he started writing, hey, Johnny, Daddy loves you so much. If anything happens to me today, I want you to take care of your mother and your little sister. That's the one letter you never wanted to write, and that's the one letter you never wanted to receive. As we got down to Ground Zero, the bus came to a stop, and that cloud of ash and smoke completely covered the bus. We all huddled before getting off the bus, and we just stood there in silence. I don't even know how long we stood there, but anyway, that's how my day began that day. I'll tell you two silver lining stories without getting into all the details. There were 7 people still trapped in the World Trade Center when that second tower had come down. One civilian, there was a lady being carried out by 2 members from Ladder Company 6, and the fact that they were carrying her out down all these stairs, they just happened to be on the 3rd floor of one of the stairwells, and the tower had come down. That's the little corner of the building in all the pictures you guys see that was still intact. That lady, I don't know her name, but the New York media dubbed her as the angel in the stairwell. The other 4 guys were members from my firehouse, Engine Company 39. There was one person missing, and they didn't know if he was still in the building or not. So in the greatest tradition of the job, instead of leaving, they went back up into the stairway just to double check to make sure he wasn't there. He was out, that person was long gone, but the fact that they went in and they didn't want to leave him, that saved their life. After I was down there for about a half hour after the commotion settled, we worked as a group and we were able to get all 7 people out from that particular incident. The other silver lining story I'd like to mention is something I saw in the video. As a firefighter, I thought we were alone. Not alone by myself, but alone with just the New York City Fire Department. I spent about 37 hours down there before going home. And the next day when I finally went home, it was midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning, and they drove us to the restricted zone. They let us out, And after feeling that I was alone for those 37 hours, just with the weight of the world on our shoulders as firefighters, there were thousands of New Yorkers, thousands, with flags, singing songs, with candles, with signs. They were cheering us like we were celebrities, and it was the greatest feeling in the world, and I'll never forget that experience. The days and weeks and months that followed were some of the most difficult and challenging I've had in my life. As a New Yorker, the wind was knocked out of our city. And as a firefighter, we were knocked down, momentarily. We lost 2 firefighters from my company, Ladder 16, firefighter Rob Giratolo and Lieutenant Ray Murphy. And Engine 39, I just told you, had luckily escaped that tragedy, and we were able to rescue them. We lost 343 guys, 343 brothers that day, from the chief of department all the way down through the ranks. To use a baseball analogy, that would be like losing the entire American and National League All-Star team and additional players from every single team in the league. It was an unbelievable day. It was an unbelievably evil attack. It was an unbelievable rescue effort, the largest rescue effort in the history of our country. And it was an unbelievable union of solidarity and support from every state in our country. In life, everyone gets knocked down, but it's what you do when you get back up that defines you. That's the takeaway point I'd like to leave. Always keep pushing forward. It doesn't matter if you're a student, middle-aged, or elderly. We all need to make sure that when we're down, we get up even stronger. That is who we are as individuals. That is who we are as Americans. That is what defines us. Today in New York, we have rebuilt what was once a decimated Lower Manhattan. The new Freedom Tower rises over the memorial pools over the memorial pools that honor our lost. The New York City Fire Department has come back charging in the aggressive nature that defines the job and its members. Today, the fire department is better equipped, better prepared, and better trained than they've ever been. Terrorism training has been implemented to all members of the department, and monthly drills are conducted at landmarks all over the city on a moment's notice. Our fallen members are honored in every firehouse, and their names are inscribed on engines, ladders, rescue trucks, and battalion trucks that they all selflessly worked on. It's funny, this is an election year, and there's so much political agenda out there, budget cuts, union debates, pension reforms. I just want to let you know one of the personal ideologies of the fire department. This goes for any firefighter anywhere in the country. When that bell sounds, we don't ask what religion you are, we don't ask your race, we don't ask your age, your gender, your sexual orientation, or what political party you're going to vote for. When that bell goes off, we go 100%, and we put ourselves in harm's way, and we try to make sure everyone gets to safety. That's the thing about firefighters. We don't get paid for what we do. We get paid for what we're willing to do. And that's never been more evident than on this day 11 years ago. Some days I drift back, I think about that bus ride downtown. I wish it was all just a bad dream. It seems like every time I look at the clock, it says 3:43 or 9:11. With that being said, I've never been more proud or more honored to work with my fellow firefighters on that day and all the days of my career, especially during the rescue and recovery effort. In closing, I'd like to read you something that was posted in the fire department orders last night, and it was read this morning, a few minutes before 8:46, when the first tower was struck. Every fire officer read this today in front of every firehouse with their members at attention. Today we remember the bravery of the 343 of this great department who made this supreme sacrifice 11 years ago today so that others could be saved. 11 years ago today, members gathered in the firehouses and EMS stations to begin another day of service to the people of this city, not knowing what the day would bring. This can be said about every day in the life of a career first responder. On September 11, 2001, the department lost not simply 343 members, but we lost one member 343 times. Today we come together to remember these individuals. We also come as a fire department family to give strength and support to each other. We continue to honor the memory of our 343 fallen members and their contribution to the department, to the city of New York, and to this country. We will never forget them. Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant Hennessy, for that moving address. Next up, we'll hear from there, an inspirational song about moving on.